Calling this meeting to order, please have a seat. Please also turn your cell phones to vibrate or silent or vibrate or off, anything that doesn't make any noise. That would be great. And we'll turn to our clerk administrator to call roll, please.
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brzezinski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Diane McNutt.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Mike Wasserman.
Here. Thank you very much. Joining us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance are the Fisher Middle School French students who competed in the National French Contest sponsored by the American Association of Teachers of French. This competition involved more than 100,000 students, and 13 of our Los Gatos students achieved national ranking. C'est très magnifique, no? All right, so far so good. We in Los Gatos can take great pride in the many and diverse accomplishments of our youth. Last council meeting, you heard about a Los Gatos High School student program that is making a difference in the culture at Los Gatos High School. This week, you're meeting a group of students who have excelled in a foreign language, contributing to building connections with our worldwide community. You'll hear about the individual rankings of the students achieved when I read the commendation. Collectively, they represent la crème de la crème among middle school French students in the United States. Now, please, if the Fisher Middle School French students and their instructor, Jane Herbrook, would join me, please, at the podium. That was pretty good for a guy whose mother's name is Lola Catarina Puccinelli. Oh, and Principal Frazier, didn't think I'd see you. Would you please come on up here? Here's the boss at Fisher Middle School, and please come on in. Okay, and everybody else, tighten in a little bit side by side so that your family and friends can watch you see you on TV. Okay, slide in a little bit. All right, wonderful. Now the Fisher Middle School students will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, hopefully in English, so we can all join in. Who would like to start us off? How about you?
Okay.
All right, if everyone will please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. We got a little more to go. And if I can get a couple of you on the end that are a little taller, if you'll come here alongside Principal Frazier, and on this side here with Ms. Herbrook. Come on. And somebody on the other side, let's close that screen. You all heard that? 100,000 people participated, and 13 young people from Los Gatos High won honors. That is incredible. You know, a lot of times we forget with all the accomplishments of our young people that our community is only 30,000 people. Now I'd like to read the commendation. This is Herbrook. Whereas the Fisher Middle School French students participated in the American Association of Teachers of French National French Contest designed to help stimulate further interest in the teaching and learning of French and to identify and reward achievement on the part of both students and teachers. Approximately 101,487 students at all levels participated nationally in the 2009 contest. Whereas students have 60 minutes to complete a 70-question exam that includes listening comprehension, grammatical concepts, reading comprehension, cultural topics, whereby 7th grade students compete with middle school students and 8th grade students compete with high school level 1 French students. Our 8th graders are better than most people's high schoolers. Whereas, of the 24,450 French 1 students participating in the AATF National French Contest, 11 Fisher 8th grade students received national ranking, and of the 7,928 7th grade participants, 2 Fisher students received national ranking. And whereas the following 8th grade students were honored: And when I say your name, please raise your hand, okay? Please do raise your hand. And I don't mean just a little raise hand. Raise your hand so they can see you. Yuki Koide. Yuki was the silver medalist. Bronze medalist, Brendan Nugent. Not here this evening. All right. And the rest of the team here, Rachel Madden, Sudarshan Seshadri, Samantha G., Patrick McNaughton, Shabab Sadiq, Olivia Fleshig, Ellen Field, Shreyas Kulkarni, and Ari Rubin. The following 7th grade students were honored. Bronze medalists Naoki Tsuda and Brooke Ahmed. Let's hear it for these young people. Reading that French was a little easier than some of those last names. All right. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby commend and congratulate Fisher Middle School French students and their teachers for their exemplary performance at the 2009 French National Contest. Let's hear it for these kids.
I'm a product of Los Gatos Schools, and I took French at Los Gatos High School, which was with Fred Keplinger, who was an institution here at the time. And I think it's a real credit to the community that we're able to offer the languages at the middle school level so that they're able to pursue them well into their high school years. So thank you, Town of Los Gatos.
Thank you. Thank you. For you? And on behalf of the Town Council, I'll give these to you for distribution later, but those are the official town pins that we wear on our lapels, and we have one for each of you. Thank you very, very much. You made Los Gatos proud. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. You can have a seat. Thank you very much. And I don't know how to say it in French, but if you'd like to leave now knowing it's a school night, okay, you might want to go ahead. If you want to stay for the annexation or for the approval, that's okay too. All right, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause as they leave. Take care. You know, it's great. Our youth make us so proud in this community, and we're so environmentally conscious, and we have a number of good things going on. There go a bunch of fine, wonderful people who I'm sure are going to do well at the next level of education. Now I'm pleased to invite Elizabeth Holmgren, Executive Director of the Northern California Solar Energy Association, forward. Come on up here. Come on up here. It's fine. She's going to present an award to the Town of Los Gatos. I'll let Mrs. Holmgren tell you about the first place award the Town of Los Gatos is receiving. Ms. Holmgren.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you so much, Mayor Wasserman and Town Council members. I'm glad to be here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity, and now you hear a German accent, not French, but close enough. And yes, I'm the Executive Director of the Northern California Solar Energy Association. And we are supporting and promoting solar education efforts to increase solar use among home owners and businesses. We have been around since 1975, and for the last 33 years, our organization's board of directors has undertaken various outreach programs to increase awareness about the benefits of solar, by really building a bridge between consumers, policymakers, researchers, and ultimately the consumer, as I just tried to say. Now, we strongly believe that that solar use is really part of a commitment for an environmentally sustainable society, and that's why we will augment these efforts. And we are very, very pleased about Los Gatos taking the lead in installing solar. And we are very pleased to give you the first place award for medium-sized cities.
I'm sorry,
This-
what place was that?
First place award.
First place.
For medium-sized cities. And basically what NorCal Solar does, we have something called the Bay Area Solar Installations Report, and we look at 10 counties, 165 cities, and you rank just up there on top for watts installed, number of installations, and also especially number of installations by 1,000 residents. So we hope to increase this even further so that California can meet their goals by 2016, actually to have 3,000 megawatts installed all over California. And we are not just there yet, so we hope the town of Los Gatos and others will keep this up. So for that, I have brought also a solar energy resource guide that I thought your staff may want to look at and see whether you want to further disseminate it as part of your upcoming education efforts. I also brought you the report, but finally, the most important thing, I will be giving you this award. And it's on behalf of our board of directors and our sponsors. And we really appreciate it. Congratulations. Keep up the good work.
Congratulations, Los
And
Gatos.
thanks for your time.
Any word I want to add in? I want to say thank you to the association and for the first place award, and to you for coming down personally to present it. I'd like to say that I'm not surprised that Los Gatos won this award. The Los Gatos community is known for being very environmentally aware, and the Los Gatos town government is taking many actions to support a green community, like having a very low permit fee and a streamlined process for solar installations. Thank you again for presenting us with this award and recognition. Thank you. And if you'll shake the hands of the council members. There it is. I was looking for where the... Okay. Our first proclamation for the evening regards National Foster Care Month, and I'd like to ask Lois Rapp to join me. Oh, you do? All right. Security.
Yeah, back up.
All right. Lois is joining me at the podium to receive this proclamation on behalf of foster parents in Los Gatos. Ms. Rapp is a longtime foster parent, a Los Gatos resident, and one of 33 foster parents in our town. Let's hear it for Lois. And who's this?
My husband, Peter.
And Peter Rapp. Thank you very much. And Lois and Peter, I'd like to read this proclamation to the two of you. Whereas a family serves as an individual's primary source of love, identity, self-esteem, and support, and can be considered the foundation of a community. And whereas the future direction of communities is dependent upon the health and development of children and youth. And whereas in the town of Los Gatos, 33 children and youth are being provided a safe, secure, and stable foster care family home environment. And whereas foster families open their homes and hearts to children, improving their well-being and enabling them to grow into healthy adults. And whereas dedicated foster families often adopt foster children, resulting in a need for more foster families. And whereas Foster Care Month provides the opportunities to recognize and commend the commitment of foster families who provide a safe home environment for children in need of affection, love, and security. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Mike Wasserman, by the virtue and authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim the month of May 2009 to be Foster Care Month within our town. Let's have a round of applause.
I just want to say that 9 of those children live in our home. But what I appreciate a great deal from the town is the fact that the children, of course, all go to school. And the school is very supportive of the children in the school and provides, tremendous services for them to move forward as well. And so I really appreciate that part. And the fact that they, they're really safe here. They can bike around. They can live a real kind of small town life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have another round of applause. And would you please shake the hands of the council members? They'd like to meet each of you. Thank you. And Bob Day, there you are. Nice to see you. I saw you earlier. Please come on up. Boy, this is great. We honor kids, we honor environment, we honor the kids. Now we're dealing with the environment. Los Gatos has its priorities straight, don't they? Absolutely. All right. Our next proclamation is for Water Awareness Month. Here to accept the proclamation on behalf of San Jose Water Company, the town's water provider, is Bob Day, the Director of Customer Service. Bob, thank you for being here this evening, and if I may, I'll read this proclamation. Whereas water is California's most precious and finite resource, and whereas a safe and reliable water supply provides for a high quality of life through public health protection, firefighting protection, and economic prosperity. And whereas the Santa Clara Valley is expecting the third year of below normal rainfall and a second year of reduced water deliveries from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, and whereas the Santa Clara Valley Water District has called for a 15% mandatory conservation in response to the drought, and whereas local governments, water agencies, companies, agriculture, industry, environmentalists, and concerned citizens are working together to conserve and protect the water supplies, and whereas during May 2009, water agencies, I did better with those last names, water agencies and companies, cities, counties, and organizations throughout California will organize activities to educate the public about water awareness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that by the virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, I hereby proclaim May 2009 as Water Awareness Month and urge all citizens to support local water agencies and companies in their efforts to help Californians use water more wisely. Thank you, sir, for being here tonight. Would you like to say a word? Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Mayor Wasserman, for the proclamation and for essentially pointing out the importance of using water wisely during this time of water shortage. We appreciate that, and we will do our best as a company to do the best job that we can during this time of shortage.
Super. Thank you very much. I'll tell you one thing that's been helping me out is I've been going to the not Weather Channel, but online, weather.com, whatever, and looking, and when I saw rain coming, I know my sprinklers come on, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 6 minutes. When I see rain coming, I just go out there and flip the switch over on my timer. It goes to off. And I'll tell you, the natural rainwater does better for my plants and lawns anyway, and you just pick up, you save the third that week of what you'd otherwise use. So it's simple things like that that are really making a difference. Thank you very much, and if you'd please shake each of our council members' hands. And Bob, we appreciate your partnership in that of the water company. Thank you very much. Our final proclamation is in recognition of Municipal Clerks Week. And here to accept the proclamation are our town clerk staff, Jackie Rose and Stephanie Angulo. Come on forward, ladies. There we go. Well, this is a nice opportunity. Have you up here instead of behind the scenes all the time. Whereas the town of Los Gatos has been served by both elected and appointed town clerk staff since the incorporation of the town in 1887. And whereas the town of Los Gatos recently approved merging the prior elective and appointive town clerk functions. And whereas the town of Los Gatos depends on its town clerk staff to provide public access and information for town council meetings and other town services. And whereas the town of Los Gatos relies on its town clerk staff to encourage and solicit public participation in boards, commissions, and other town services. And whereas the town of Los Gatos requires its town clerk staff to serve as the primary repository and provider of official town actions and documentation. And whereas the municipal clerk function has a long history of impartial information management and service delivery to thousands of jurisdictions throughout California, the United States of America, and the rest of the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Mike Wasserman, Mayor of the town of Los Gatos, by the virtue and authority vested in me, do hereby deem it appropriate and proclaim May 3rd through May 9th as Municipal Clerks Week in the town of Los Gatos, and further extend appreciation to all of our town clerk staff, past and present, elected and appointed, for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the town of Los Gatos, government, and community. Please, let's give these two ladies a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They probably haven't seen each other for about an hour. But hey, now I'd like to ask Vice Mayor Diane McNutt to come on down and join me at the podium. And as she comes forward, I would like to ask Father Justin Zawadzki, pastor of St. Mary's, and I just said Vice Mayor, to join me at the podium. Father Justin, come on down. One forward here. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Good. Okay, this is a bittersweet occasion for us to honor and thank Father Zawadzki for his 16 years of selfless service to the community. 17 years. 17 years. I've really only known Father Zawadzki for about the last 7 years. 7 to 8 years, I think. And in my knowing him, he has been an open and willing partner in anything and everything that the town of Los Gatos has taken on. If it has been community unity, if he was working with the Meadows with the Leela Atkin Award, and I know he's involved in 100 more things, but he's a very modest, humble man. And his moving on to Minnesota is going to be a loss for our community. But I can tell you, the last 17 years, this man has been an incredible partner, very much behind the scenes. But he has made a lot of wonderful things happen, not just at St. Mary's, but in our community as a whole. He serves on various boards. He's there with his opinion. He's there to lend a hand. I have never known this man to turn down anything, and I've been very impressed. And when I learned of your departure, I got to tell you, I was sad, even though I've only known you for 17 years. Now I want to turn this over, 7 years. Now I want to turn this over to Diane McNutt, who's probably known him all 17 years. No? Known for a while? Okay. But I'm going to turn it over to Diane for just a second, and then I'd like to hear from you, Father Justin, if you can say a few words to the community.
Thank you. Actually, it's 12 years, I believe. The faith community plays such a big part of Los Gatos, and St. Mary's is certainly a big part of that. So I don't know what else I can say that the mayor hasn't already said. We're all very sad. We don't think he should leave. We don't think he should move out of state. But I guess there's free will, and it's actually going to happen. So I think it's time to honor him.
Okay, let's do it. Thank you. And Father, we've got a commendation signed by the Town Council of Los Gatos as a small way of saying thank you and acknowledging your service to our community. Whereas Father Justin Zawadzki has served as pastor of St. Mary's of the Immaculate Conception Church in Los Gatos since August 1st, 1992, and is retiring at the end of May 2009. Whereas St. Mary's was originally established in Los Gatos as a mission on Santa Cruz Avenue between Main Street and Bean Avenue. In 1912, the small hall used as the church was moved to the corner of Bean and Tate, and St. Mary's was established as a parish in its present location. 2 years later, the first permanent rectory was built on parish property, and the current church was built in 1962. And whereas Father Zawadzki has directed the parish and its 1,948 registered families to be involved in church and community outreach activities, and I can attest to that, such as collecting food, clothing, and other necessities for people in need, especially in connection with the town to help Pascagoula, Mississippi. Whereas Father Zawadzki has served on the Interfaith Council with other Los Gatos spiritual leaders. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby render with special appreciation a commendation to Father Justin Zawadzki in recognition of his commitment to provide the community with outstanding spiritual leadership for the past 17 years. Let's hear it for Father Justin.
Thank you for the recognition. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to live and to minister in such a great community with such great people. It's in many ways it's hard to leave, but sometimes you have to know when it's time to move on. So it's been a pleasure to, as I say, live and work here. The community is like heaven on earth in so many ways. So thank you very much.
I'm sure I'd like to say something. I forgot about Pascagoula. There's just so many places. He's been involved with so many things. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to return to my seat, and as I do so, I'm going to ask our town attorney, Ori Korb, to give the closed session report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. Council did meet in closed session tonight on two areas, a number of different discussions within each, but the first was a conference with its real property negotiator concerning the properties identified on your agenda tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 properties. No final actions were taken. Direction was given. Actually, it's 5 properties to the negotiator. But I do want to mention for the record that with regard to the last property, 224 West Main Street, the mayor, who owns a house within 500 feet of that property, did not participate in that discussion. He was out of the room for that discussion and all discussions concerning that property. The other closed session discussion concerned a conference with the council's labor negotiator regarding the various represented and unrepresented employee organizations identified on the agenda. For tonight, council gave direction. No final actions were taken. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Korb. Now we'll move on to the council matters portion of our agenda, and I'll look to council for anything they'd like to put in. No? Okay, I've got something that I would like to add in, and it kind of goes with the spirit of the evening, where we've been talking about the environment, the kids, and the many attributes of Los Gatos. For the first time ever, I'm going to use this opportunity to share with the public just a few of the wonderful events that some or all of us have attended in Los Gatos in just the last 2 weeks. And as I read this list, I'd like you all to think about the diversity of the different events and the fact that these have all taken place. I'm calling this presentation, It Takes a Town. Los Gatos became Los Perros for a day as Society Dogs and the Humane Society put on an event at Oak Meadow Park that more than 50 dogs attended to celebrate the occasion. Los Gatos celebrated Arbor Day twice by planting several trees alongside the tennis court at La Rinconada Park and by assisting 500 kids at Van Meter Elementary School with planting a few more alongside their field to help provide places of shade to eat lunch during the hot weather days. Our Chamber of Commerce held a mixer at one business that celebrated its 4th anniversary and cut a ribbon at another business having its grand opening. Los Gatos Little League had its annual opening day ceremony in which 700 kids and 400 adults participated. All that color and energy made for a truly spectacular and inspirational sight. Sustainability and Focus and the Photography Guild of Los Gatos each put on their own show featuring the photography skills of our middle and high school students in a variety of ways. Entrants from 19 high schools were present, and Los Gatos students won several awards. Next came the Great Race, featuring thousands of runners running from Saratoga to Los Gatos. I don't think that symbolizes anything. It's just the direction that they ran. The day before the race, the Rotary clubs cleaned the entire stretch of Highway 9 as a community service. That evening, the Police Foundation held an event thanking all those who support them so well. The new flak jackets were on display, and the talk of a new police dog was discussed. The Meadows held their annual Leela Atkin Award ceremony to recognize the senior at their facility who was voted as having provided the most community service. The Unsung Heroes Awards were held at Los Gatos Presbyterian Church to recognize and honor a few of the individuals in our county who provide various forms of relief and comfort for those less fortunate. And completing this partial list of wonderful events, all of which occurred in just the last 2 weeks, the town honored hundreds of volunteers at its annual volunteer recognition event. The efforts of these volunteers is absolutely critical in order to keep Los Gatos as beautiful as it is, as well as to provide all the services and amenities it does. Their community service hours save the town over $1 million. That's why we like to say it takes a town. And that is a perfect segue into an event that happened last Thursday that I intentionally left off my list. And I'll now invite Rebecca Elliott of the League of California Cities to come forward and speak about that.
Excuse me, allergy time of year. Good evening, Mayor Wasserman, members of the Town Council, residents of Los Gatos. It's always a pleasure for me to come to the town of Los Gatos because every time I'm here, it's to present you with an award. Normally, it's the Helen Putnam Award of Excellence, which you've won from the League several times during the 8 years I've been the regional manager. This time, I'm here to present you with the Peninsula Division's 4th annual Morley Brothers Bocce Ball Trophy as the division champions for 2009. Mayor Wasserman, if you would come down and accept this trophy, it is the fun thing for me to do tonight. It was a very well contested game, the last game between you and the Campbell Police Department. Everybody stayed till the bitter end, and I believe it was the last ball that was thrown that was the one that brought you home the trophy once again. And folks, this is the 3rd time out of 4 years, and everybody tells me they must be handicapped.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rebecca.
Very welcome.
Thank you. And I'm accepting this on behalf of Los Gatos' bocce team that, as Rebecca said, competed in the League of California Cities annual tournament there were 14 other teams, about a dozen different cities represented, and Los Gatos brought home the cup. So it's kind of neat tonight to see that the bocce thing, of course, is fun and silly, but to see the environment, the accomplishments, and the achievements of this town environmentally, and the accomplishments and achievements of this town with our youth. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And on this year's team from council and from clerk's office, we had Jackie Rose, Joe Przinski, myself, and our town manager, Greg Larson. Good job, everybody. And I'll tell you, going against that Campbell Police SWAT team at the end and winning by one, just going to be real extra careful not to go over the speed limit in Campbell. All right. Now it's time to deal with tonight's consent items. Manager matters first is a good point. Thank you very much, Councilman Rice. Mr. Larson, any manager matters?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and Los Gatos community, Greg Larson, town manager. Just 4 quick announcements. First, we received notice from the State Department of Finance last week that as of January 1st, Los Gatos is now a population of 30,497 people. The first time we've been over 30,000. Larger isn't necessarily better, but we appreciate the new 500 residents in town, and we look forward to them joining us in keeping our community as strong as it is. Related to that, last Saturday, we had an opportunity for public hearing from experts on the 4 issues that the council has chosen as the priority focus of our general plan update. And we had 4 exceptional panels on the environment, youth, recreation, and seniors that provided expert testimony to our consultants and staff on those 4 issues you have identified for our general plan update, and you'll be hearing more about that as it comes forward over the next several months. Last Thursday, we had a particularly memorable occasion when our library unveiled the bench, actually it was Friday, I believe it was, for Adam Hitchcock Glover, a young Los Gatos lad who had passed away due to an unfortunate illness, and his family, in recognition of his love of the library, love of reading, and to encourage all other youth of this community to have that same pursuit, dedicated a memorial bench with support from Parks and Public Works in front of the library, and that bench will be moved to the new library when it opens up in an appropriate time. Last, I did want to highlight for the council and the public that our next meeting will almost be exclusively devoted to review and adoption of the town budget for 2009-10, next fiscal year, starting July 1. And like all of Silicon Valley, in fact, all of the world, we have not been immune from the global economic crisis that has struck us since last October. And we are going to have difficult challenges for the 5 years ahead. But following the guidance of this council in years past, we're following a fiscally prudent and conservative approach in meeting those challenges.
That's it? No French words to pronounce? Nothing, just...
I have hard enough time with English.
All right.
Off on French.
All right. Thank you. That concludes manager matters. Thank you very much, Mr. Rice, for that. Now we're going to proceed with tonight's consent items, but for any of you not aware, looks from the turnout that you all are aware, but if you wish to speak tonight about anything not on the agenda or anything on the agenda, you need to fill out one of these cream-colored cards. Yes, it was French. Okay. And down at the bottom of the card, I encourage everyone who's not on the town's listserv already to put in your email address, and that way you'll be kept informed about twice a month. The town sends out an email blast to everybody on their listserv, letting you know what's going on in this community, what's on the council agenda, different events, things like that. Okay, now we're at the consent items, and I will look to council to see if there's any consent items like to be pulled. Seeing none, I will then ask if any member of the public would like to pull any items. I don't have any cards. Citizen Ray, what do you want to pull tonight? That's fine. What number do you want?
Number 6, number 8, if you please.
All right. 6 and 8 are pulled. Other than that, council, I'll look for any comments or a motion regarding the remaining 6 consent items besides 6 and 8.
I move to approve the consent calendar 1 through 8 exclusive of 6 and 8.
I'll second. We have a motion made. We have a motion seconded. Do we have any discussion? None. I'll call for the question. All in favor of approving consent items 1 through 8 excluding 6 and 8, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. Now we go to verbal communications. And we have 1 card. Citizen Ray, come on forward.
Hey, what do you say, Citizen Ray? You know, I'm typically the only public speaker here. The only person from the town of Los Gatos that comes down to talk about the public interest. So why don't you just put my card in a permanent fashion, okay? And we'll save some time. And I won't have to do, hey, Citizen Ray every time, okay? Indeed. Tonight I wore my Cal cap. It represents the what it says on the Cal seal, the great seal of the University of California. Fiat Lux. Let there be light. Light in the dark corners of local government in Los Gatos. Indeed. Also, I've just been told by some of my supporters that yours truly, I'm on Google. I never knew that. So any of you that want to get up to date as to what I stand for, talking to the TV audience, Google me and find out what I represent, okay? Citizen Ray, hey, what do you say? All right. And don't forget, there are no homeowner associations in Los Gatos. We have all this talk about how wonderful the town is, but keep in mind, there isn't one homeowner association in Los Gatos. Okay? And that's where the citizen gets involved in local government. And why isn't there someone besides me? Why? Ask that question, okay? Yes. Next, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Wasserman. At the last council meeting, you belittled my comment about the importance of property taxes and so forth. And you said that just a small amount of money comes forward out of every assessment, okay? But I want to tell you, I talked with Steve Conway, and he backed up what I thought. That small amount of money, when added up over a year's time, small amount of money per whatever it is, okay, amounts to, this past year, to $8 million, okay? And there's only one tax revenue bigger, and that's sales tax at $9 million.
Thank you, Citizen
So
Ray. Your time is up. Don't say any more, because I'm just like that tonight. Don't do it.
Why can't I finish?
Yeah, because your time's up, and it's a fair amount of time
Cut me
for
off.
everybody. Don't do it.
Hey.
That's a warning. That's one.
You got it.
Second one, you're gone. All right. We close the verbal communication portion of the meeting on a high note, and we now go to the public hearing portion of our meeting. And we're going to start out with item number 9, to consider an appeal of a planning commission decision denying approval of a new single-family residence, APN 527-56010. And we're going to turn, Suzanne Davis, take the chair, please, and we'll get a staff report.
Good evening. This property is located on the south side of Santa Rosa Drive, just east of Colorado Court. It is in the Alta Vista subdivision, which, by the way, does have a homeowners association. And I think there's a few residents here this evening that can probably attest to that. The site is 3 acres, and it is one of 2 remaining undeveloped properties within this subdivision. The bulk of the homes were developed in the 80s, early 90s. It is most of the homes were built before the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines were adopted. We had a previous proposal for a new residence in 2004. That was denied by both the Planning Commission and Town Council. That prior project did not comply with numerous portions of the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, including the FAR, the height restrictions, 25 feet, had excessive grading, development on slopes over 30%. The house at that time was 7,600 square feet and 30 feet high. This is the same applicant. They filed a new application in 2005 and took the guidelines to heart and significantly changed their plans to try and get a project through. This site is on a ridge line. It is a topographic ridge. It is, however, not a ridge line that is identified as significant by the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. We do have a map in the document that shows 2 significant ridge lines. One of them is Blossom Hill, and the other is Aztec Ridge. I also took a look at the Blossom Hill Comprehensive Open Space Study, which identifies significant ridges and visible areas. And it was left out of that study. It may have been because it was primarily developed when we did that study in 1990. So that particular document doesn't have anything that really pertains to this property. Design considerations, besides the direction that was provided by Planning Commission and Town Council in 2004, were, this is an infill project. The only other property that's not developed right now in this subdivision is on Colorado Court. It's a little bit lower down and doesn't have any visibility issues with it. All the homes along Sierra Azul and Santa Rosa are on a ridgeline. This is just the one remaining lot. The house can't be pushed further back on the site because what will happen is we'll push it onto slopes that are greater than 30%, which we're trying to discourage. So they have placed the house in the location where it needs to be. We tried to keep it above the 490-foot contour. That's more or less the break point between slopes that are under 30 and over. And if you've been on the property and took a look, you'll see that just beyond the story poles, the property dives down pretty severely. So even though we have a 3-acre site, there's a pretty constrained property that we're dealing with, and there's a very limited area in which to place this house. The applicant is proposing a 2-story home with a 3-car garage. The house is about 5,600 square feet. The garage is 736. And there is also a cellar element that's 950 square feet. That'll be completely below grade. The size and the FAR of the home are within those for other homes in the immediate neighborhood. There aren't any trees that will be impacted. There is one very large oak at the top of the property that will be saved, and no grading will occur within the drip line of that tree. The tree will probably have to come up a little bit because right now we have limbs that are all the way on the ground, but it won't be pruned the way you see in the rendering right there, because that would be a violation of the tree protection ordinance. So there will be some limb trimming, but it won't be quite that extensive. There were a number of technical reviews that were done for this project, including architectural, arborist, geotechnical evaluations. And we also did environmental review. There was a mitigated negative declaration for the proposal and a mitigation monitoring plan that goes along with that. The recommendation is for approval of those 2 documents, assuming that the project is going to move forward. A number of neighbors have participated in this project as it's gone along through the process. We had several Planning Commission hearings, and concerns were raised about visibility, privacy, blocking of views, and there were also some questions about the story poles. We've had story poles placed on the site on 2 different occasions. The first set were representative of the 25-foot high proposed residence. The applicant subsequently lowered the height by 4 feet by dropping it into the site, and the poles that you see on the site today are representative of the revised plans. They are accurate according to the contractor that installed them. We had a couple of planning commissioners that were concerned about the height of the house, and 2 specifically did want to see the house lowered to 18 feet. There wasn't a consensus on that, and the applicant wasn't specifically directed to go to a 1-story, 18-foot design by the commission, although they were encouraged to do what they could to reduce bulk and mass, lower the height, and try to make the house less obtrusive. The commission was under a time constraint with this application when it was considered at the last meeting. We started with this in August, and the applicant worked for several months in making adjustments to the plans and trying to figure out what they could do to address concerns and tried to work with neighbors. What happened was that when it went back to the Planning Commission, they had to take action at that meeting because we have permit streamlining deadline, and they needed to do something, either approve it or deny it. And I think the commission also felt that the applicant did make some concessions, but they were concerned that it wasn't quite enough. And that concludes staff's report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There we go.
Ms. Davis, for you. The specific time constraint that the commission faced on its February 25th meeting, that was
Correct.
The meeting. Having gone past that, having received the denial, we're under no constraints at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Second of all, you indicated that the story poles reflect a reduction of 4 feet in height.
Yes.
Now, there was some discussion at the Planning Commission about that being either 2.5 feet, not quite 4 feet. There had been some adjustments made that actually increased the height, so the 4-foot depression wasn't reflected in an exact 4-foot reduction in the story poles. Could you clarify that?
I think the project architect can probably explain it a little better. You're correct, there was some confusion on that. They are bringing the pad down 4 feet, and there may be some areas where the entire house didn't come down quite that much, and I think it's a design-related issue, and I believe that Ms. Edison can, or Ms. Matthews, I'm sorry, can explain that a little better than I can.
All right, and then one final question, at least at this point. Two of the commissioners were very concerned about the issue of ridgeline, and then on page 15 of our standards and guidelines, hillside development standards and guidelines, it does specify the ridge between Blossom Hill Road and Shannon Road is one of the significant ridge lines. Is it a semantic issue? How is it that this particular site is not included in that specified ridge line, Blossom Hill Shannon Road? And I'll probably just do.
We are going to put a map up here on the overhead for you to take a look at. It'll show the ridge lines.
Thank you.
You can see the two areas that are lighter green.
Mm-hmm.
The one at the top is the Blossom Hill. And then you'll see to the right of that and a little bit below, that's the Alta Vista subdivision. So the ridgeline does extend through that light green area, and then it kind of curves down and then goes up through that subdivision. But we didn't include that primarily because it wasn't in the Blossom Hill open space study. It was shown in the area that we mapped here.
Clarify, this map is from the Hillside Development Guidelines, and it specifies the two ridgeline areas that are protected on page 15 of the text, and it does not include the current development site.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
There is also a criteria in the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines that says other ridge lines as deemed appropriate. You do have that ability to say you feel it's a significant ridge line. That really didn't come up at the Planning Commission meeting, though.
Right, and that indicates it has to be by the approving body.
Correct.
Anyway, and there was no specification to that. Thank you.
Does that do it for you, Mr. Brzezinski, right now? Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, a couple of questions of staff, if I might. I noticed that we received some desk items on this, or a desk item today. Is there any changes in the design of the home from the last time it was before the Planning Commission till now?
No, there's not. The staff did recommend in that report to the Planning Commission that the applicant reduce the second floor. The applicant indicated to the commission that they'd consider that, but they didn't present any additional plans or make any specific changes.
All right, and then if I recall my reading of the Planning Commission minutes, wasn't it that the home was dropped 4 feet and then the roof line was raised 2 feet?
I believe the roof line may have come up in one area, but not the main ridge across the house.
And then sort of going on from where Mr. Brzezinski was going, I was looking at pages 36 and I think it's 36 and 37, 35 and 36 of the Hillside Standards, and in that they're talk about 28 feet and an 18-foot measurement with regard to the homes, and they refer to ridge line or a ridge line. I don't see any reference in that. This is under building height standards. I don't see any reference in that to a specific ridge line or to a major ridge line. Can you give me some help there?
We use the two ridge lines identified in the plan on the map as significant ridge lines, and if it's within that area, it's an automatic 18 feet. Otherwise, it's more of a subjective element that can be applied if the deciding body feels it's appropriate.
One more.
Yes, please.
Because it does say ridge line and visible home shall not extend more than 18 feet above the existing grade. And so what I understand you're saying is that's not a standard. At that point, it's subjective?
If it's not within the defined significant ridgeline, we have taken it as being something that can be considered, but it's not an automatic. We have taken that stance on visible homes, though, and because visible is defined as you can see more than 25% of an elevation. So if we put up story poles and we can see more than 25%, then we have required those homes to be 18 feet. But with the ridge lines, it's been, at this point, it's been held to the significant ridge lines.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm trying to read into what the minutes from the two different meetings showed me, and it was pretty clear to me that they were pushing at an 18-foot limit. The Planning Commission was, especially Commissioner Bourgeois and Sayoc.
Correct.
And my inference from that is that they were in essence, as a deciding body or whatever, making this a significant ridge line. Is that a fair characterization, or?
Well, it wasn't that clear to me being present at the meeting. You're correct. Those two planning commissioners were very adamant that they felt it was appropriate to go to 18 feet, that they felt it clearly is a ridge line. We don't have any discussion on that. And it is visible from Hicks Road, from the development below, Shannon Valley Ranch. And several planning commissioners felt that was significant. And however, they didn't roll it into a motion in terms of it needs to be a one-story, not to exceed 18-foot design.
If I may, excuse me.
Please follow up.
But from the first meeting, when they sent it back for redesign, they were pretty clear in the direction. And then I look at the vote being unanimous for denial, and I'm wondering if, again, they were under a time constraint that they had to act. They couldn't send it back for redesign.
Correct.
So that's where I'm kind of coming from. I guess I'll let it go.
I think the Planning Commission would have tried to work with the applicant further at the second meeting if they had the ability to do so. They might have asked them to do something further in terms of lowering the height. The first time it was continued for redesign, there really wasn't consensus on 18 feet.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pose a similar question to the applicant when the applicant comes forward. But from staff's point of view, I understand that the house can't be pushed any farther down the slope because it'll just tumble down. But from staff's point of view, can it be lowered farther into the ground, and or you made reference to if the Planning Commission had a chance, maybe they could have worked another design, another modification to get it lower. So are there options available, in your opinion, for the applicant to lower the height of the home? And I'm not concerned about 18 feet because I don't think that is very clear as a requirement, but lower than what it is right now.
Yes, it could be lowered through grading, lowering the pad further, or they could look at where their plate heights are. What is the floor to ceiling height? Sometimes that can be lowered. Sometimes you can do a different pitch on the roof. There's architectural ways of dealing with that. So there are options to bring the height down.
So there are options. I mean, that's from staff's point of view.
Yes.
Okay. That's all for right now.
Thank you. And I have one quick question, then we'll turn over to the applicant, and we'll come back around to us. Well, two questions, actually. I went out there, visited the site. I talked to some neighbors, and the orange netting, the story poles that I saw, were lower than the original story poles that had been brought down. And in talking to some neighbors, they said, "Oh, if that's where that is, that's fine with me." You know, and that's when your department went out and confirmed the height and everything else. Is the current height of the story poles, the last height, the one that was verified, the final one that the Planning Commission saw?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And on the question of overall height, the 18 feet to me, too, in this particular instance, doesn't seem to apply as much as normal because of the physical constraints of this property. The slope, there's only a certain place, as you said, where the home can be built. and then at that point you look at ceiling plates, lowering foundations, etc. But one question I did have an interest in, and I wondered what your answer was, given the hillsides and if there's a requirement perhaps on the roofing material, is the lowering of the pitch, the lowering of the roof, you know, from a 412 to a 212 or whatever. When I brought that issue up before, one comment I received back was, we can't go that low given the material that we're required to use on our roof in the hillside area. So a flat roof was not allowed. And I needed to get verification if a tile roof is mandated, and if that requirement for a tile roof requires no less than a 412 pitch, then the idea of lowering the roof is not an option. If that is not true, and there are ways to lower the roof pitch, I know you could pick up a couple of feet from the design if it went flatter, especially at the top, you know, if it went up like this and then was cut off. So my question to you is a flat roof allowed in that area? It would not be tile.
Yes, a flat roof is allowed. It may be that the applicant is wanting to have this particular material, and that material may not work with a certain roof pitch. But the requirement is, because it's a high fire hazard area, that it be a Class A or fire restricted or fire resistant roofing. We don't specify the material. It could be tile, it could be slate, it could be composition. There's various materials that would meet that criteria.
Torch-applied composition roof does meet the Class A requirements.
Yes. It
Okay,
could be standing
thank you.
seam metal. There's many materials that someone could use for roofing that would meet the Class A requirement, which is a building code requirement.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now, Mr. Korb. Sure, why doesn't everybody do their disclosures? Vice Mayor McNutt.
I did meet with the architect a couple weeks ago, and I visited the site.
Mr. Brzezinski.
I too met with the architect a couple of weeks ago and visited the site 3 times.
Thank you. Councilmember Spector.
I visited and walked the site.
Councilmember Rice.
I visited and walked the site on 2 occasions.
Thank you, and I visited and walked the site too. Okay, Mr. Corbett, correct me if I'm wrong, but the appellant will have up to 10 minutes to speak. Then we'll turn to the public for up to 3 minutes each. Then the appellant has 5 minutes.
I have no reason to correct you.
Thank you. I screw that up every now and then, so it's I make sure on that. Okay, we'll now ask for the appellant, John Jahan, to come forward. You'll have up to 10 minutes to speak. Then from that point on, I'm going to call the cards that I've received. So this is a last call. Anybody who wishes to speak on item number 9, please submit a card. Give it to our clerk administrator. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lily Atessa Matthews. I represent the architects that most of you met with my father, Iraj Atessam, who is the president of Edison Associates. I'm also representing the owners of the property, John Jahan and Max Saberi. I would like to show you a few slides. I think most of you have the handout, and basically Suzanne Davis covered most everything and your discussion afterwards, but I want to...
Excuse me, and it's Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Thank you. And if you want, you can pull that microphone out. So you can pull it out. There you go. So if you need to turn around and face the slide, you'll still have audio.
Okay. Okay, so as you know, we started with this project a number of years ago, and we've been coming in front of the Planning Commission a couple of times. And if I go to the second slide, you see that the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines that the architect's been going by is, I did a little comparison. I'm not actually sure which sheet I pulled that out of, but the section above is from the Town of Los Gatos Hillside regulations, and the sketch below is our design. And it's a little hard to read the dimensions, but the maximum on this one side is 35, on this side is 25, and ours is 28 inches, and on the other side where the max allowed is 35 is 28.8. So we're not quite at 18, but we're at 28.8. It will be very difficult for us to bring it down to 18 feet or much lower. Actually, the only option that we have is the roof pitch, as discussed before. The building pad cannot go any lower because we're at our maxed cut and fill. And if we go to that, we would have to go out for more geotechnical reports and would be affected by that. And the floor to ceiling ratio has already been, it's at its minimum. We can't go any lower. So that leaves us with only one option to lower it by a few feet, so it's lower than 28.8. We believe that the design is very sensitive to the environment, especially that it is in the hillside. It blends well into the hillside. And then one of the planning commissions, we were told to make it blend in more with the site, and we have done that by sort of layering it and terracing it down. And as you can see, that the drawing to the left shows what small portion of the site we actually can use. So we're very, very limited to get all the programmed spaces for our client and also try and lower the height as much as possible. The house in its mass has been lowered 4 feet to address the concerns about view preservation, view impact, and height. A number of these were brought up by the neighbors, so we've addressed those. The windows on the right side of the house were also modified to address the neighbor's privacy concern because she felt that she was looking straight into the master restroom from there, so we moved the window to the other side. Also, the second floor has been set back on all sides, and the house is very well articulated, but another thing that it did is it allowed view corridors on both sides for the neighbors across Santa Rosa Drive to have more view on the sides of the house. The proposed exterior materials and colors will very much help blend the house into the site. I know you made some comments on the oak tree. We did the delineation in this manner so you could see the architecture and how we're trying to soften it up with some of the stone. And of course, the berm hides a lot of the building that's below it too from the street. This is the view from the street. We are also going to be doing extensive landscaping, particularly in the back of the project, to help screen and soften the residents from the neighbors below and the public path that's down there. The drawings we had to the Planning Commission only had very preliminary landscaping, and we've now since then talked to a number of landscape architects, and we're going to have much more extensive landscaping. As you can see in this next one, we've shown a little bit so you can still see the architecture, but this drawing below is the rear elevation. And the one up front, we've shown a dashed line which sort of shows the berm and the fact that it was dropped in 4 feet. So you won't really see all of it from the street. And we think with the blending of the stone and the beautiful terracotta roofing, it'll be very nice and it'll blend really well. And this last one is the site you've all seen, which sort of shows how much of the view it gets blocked from across the street. And that's all I have.
Thank you. If you'll remain there, if council has any questions, Ms. Matthews. Yes, Councilmember Spector.
At the Planning Commission level, there were planning commissioners and residents who raised the issue of lowering the profile or apparent profile of the home from the street so that it had more of a one-story appearance. And I'm trying to use my words carefully so that I'm not saying it has to be one story, but giving it a one-story appearance. And I'm also thinking about the home to the immediate left. You've testified that you've gone down 4 feet, but if I recall correctly at the Planning Commission, there were at least portions of the roof that you raised 2 feet. Is that correct?
We actually didn't raise them. That was just a discrepancy in how we were presenting it. We since then corrected some of the dimensions, and I've shown that in this slide. But overall, it has been dropped 4 feet.
All right. Considering, for example, the heights of the ceilings inside, or alternatively the square footage of the entire home, is there any way that you can think of to reduce the profile of the home from the street? Or is it your position at this juncture that it's impossible?
It's not impossible, and we are considering a number of cuts. Like I mentioned before, the simplest fix would be the roof. again, we would have to reprogram and redesign the building, and we will not be able to get all the programmed spaces that we had promised the client and they've hired us for to get the number of the rooms they want and the bedrooms and everything else in there. But we could lower it a little bit so it doesn't have the two-story feel, and also take a portion of the ridge and make it flat at that area.
Please continue.
What about the concept of reducing the square footage or reducing the ceiling height inside the home?
The ceiling height has been drastically reduced. We can still look at it in a number of areas. I don't know how much impact it will have in the overall for the second story. This square footage, we've also gone to a minimum from what we had a few years ago. We have much, much less square footage now. And all that would provide us would be more view corridors on the sides. It wouldn't lower the height anymore.
Okay. Mr. Rice.
You alluded very briefly to expanding the cellar was not an option. I just wanted to make sure I understood why you said that.
Expanding the cellar?
Or moving more square footage underground.
As far as I know, in speaking with the structural engineer, we're at our max cut and fill that is allowed by the town, and that if we go any further, we would have to go back to engineering and see if it's allowed, and we would have to put in a number of retaining walls, and would be impacting the slide of the hill.
Okay, I'll get further from staff.
Do you want to ask staff confirmation right now? Let's keep it all together.
Okay. Ms. Davis?
Please respond to that as far as...
The cellar can potentially be the size of the footprint. Now, I don't know of a structural reason why it couldn't be that, but there could be something with the soils on the site. The geotechnical would have to weigh in on that, as would the structural engineer. But generally, a cellar can be the size of the building footprint.
Right. From what I understand, if I may interrupt, is it's not the same on one side than the other, because it's not flat on any portion. So if you do expand it to the full size of the footprint, you're not really at the same level. You will be impacting it you'll have more cut and fill.
Because the topography is what you're saying.
Yes, the topography is not a straight trough through.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Spector, you had a follow-up?
Sort of the same thing for staff. Is this project as proposed at some kind of a town maximum cut and fill?
No, the hillside development standards specify cut and fill depths that we try to achieve, not cubic yards. We do try to keep it balanced on the site as much as possible. In this instance, if they were going to excavate further to enlarge the cellar, I would suggest hauling it off and not trying to spread it on the site.
Thank you. Councilmember Przinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there were some issues that the Planning Commission raised that I think we need some clarification on. And I believe Councilwoman Spector did ask you to specify to the 4-foot reduction, and the current story poles that you had on the screen, that is now an exact representation of what the roof line will be, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that is a 4-foot. If you go back to that just for a sec. So that is 4 feet lower in height.
Yes.
And it's consistent now because really the testimony of the Planning Commission was confused on that point.
Yes.
Okay. And I think we've got a clarification of the issue of the maximum cut that is allowed you, and it sounds like there's more flexibility than you presented. So my issue right now is in the time since February 25th, when you last met with the Planning Commission. Have you engaged the staff in any discussion relative to making alterations in any of the plan to reflect the Planning Commission's orientation, or has there been no discussion or no change take place since that time?
I know that the owner and my father, the architect of record, met with Suzanne when they appealed. I'm not sure if there was any different direction that came out of that meeting. We basically proceeded to present at this meeting and put a PowerPoint and do a rendering that shows it and clarifies some of the issues that were ambiguous last time.
But as far as you know, there were no proposed changes
No.
subsequent to that.
No, they were not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, there's no other questions. I'll ask one quick one of my own, because I've had some confusion reading the minutes, and I asked a question of staff and got one answer and saw the picture up there, and I just want to hear from you, just for the record. I understand that reflects the current proposed plans. Is that lower than the last thing that the Planning Commission saw? Or is it the same?
This is the same height as the one with the last Planning Commission, which was February 25th.
Okay. That's what
It's the
staff
same
said. I thought in our meeting when I met with you in the group that I thought to understand, and obviously I was mistaken, that this reflected a 4-foot reduction from the last thing the Planning Commission saw. So I'm trying to grab onto what has changed or improved since the Planning Commission, since you were last before the Planning Commission. And I thought, and apparently I'm wrong, I thought that you said this was 4 feet lower than the last the Planning Commission saw.
Right. I think what we did is we just placed it more accurately and double-checked and went around, because it was to reflect a 4-foot drop, and there was some concern that maybe some of it or some of the original had not actually measured that, and so we went around and made sure, as if we had a cut and fill.
Okay, let me pursue this again and just a little bit deeper, if I may. The reason I'm asking this is, in speaking with you and speaking with the neighbors, this orange line of the top line, top of the house, came down from the previous top of the house. And are you telling me that the height didn't change, just the netting was placed at the wrong level originally?
That's what my understanding is, that we had, the first time we did it, we were showing it more at a true elevation, and since it caused so much confusion, we then showed it as if we had cut into the soil already.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking, and I won't push this point any further right now, the reason I'm asking is, in talking with some neighbors, they didn't like where the orange netting was.
Correct.
And in talking to some neighbors where the orange netting is now, they said they were okay with.
Okay.
So that to me shows a change.
Yes.
Yet I can't find from what you saw, what the Planning Commission saw and what's presented here as a change.
Right.
Okay, and one of the ways, if I'm to go with an appeal, is to see some information that the Planning Commission didn't have.
Well, I have my contractor here, and he went around with my father, and they re-verified it, and they made sure that it's shown at the correct height.
That's okay, but very simply, what the Planning Commission saw before hearing your application was the higher netting.
Yes.
Okay, that's
okay.
So this netting is lower than what the Planning Commission saw.
Not by. I'm not sure if it's by 4 feet. We had it at a true elevation, and then we've adjusted it, so it should be close to 4 feet, I think.
Okay, because this is lower than what many of the residents, neighbors originally saw.
Okay,
I'm done. Your time is up for now. Let's move on to the public cards that I've got. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to give, since we have 5, I'm going to give that up to 3 minutes each. You don't need to use all 3 minutes. If you want to go up there and say, poor sharks, and I agree with the previous person, you can do that. Okay? So you have up to 3 minutes. If I have any more cards come in, I'm going to have to cut the time down, because we do have several items on this agenda. First up is Citizen Ray. If you'll please approach the podium. After that, Mike Meyer, if you'll come forward to the front row, just so cut down the travel time. And Alex Loop, am I pronouncing that correctly? No, Loop. Loip. It's not French. All right. If you'll please come forward to the front row. After Mr. Loip will be Ron Casper and then Selfia Halim. Citizen Ray, you're on.
Yes. You know, I still cannot believe the town of Los Gatos in its public hearing process on approval does not call for the president of the Planning Commission to attend and give testimony as to what the meaning was of the Planning Commission's decision, okay? You sat tonight and heard this Davis woman over here say, well, I guess the Planning Commission meant this. I guess the Planning Commission said that. I guess she's a filter. It's unbelievable. She should be out of this. And you should, like every other community I've ever lived in, you should follow that dictate. And Ms. Marie, are you listening? This is so ugly and continues to be ugly, I can't believe it. Next. I'm looking at this huge house with steroids. Can't believe it. Drive up and down Santa Rosa, and to my hillside soul, it's lovely, okay? One-story additions from the front, fades away. It's lovely. Right on the ridge, okay? Now we got this monster shoved up there. It's a spec house if there ever was one, okay? And all you have to do is we did in Orinda. Orinda is a city of ridges, okay? And all you do is drop it down on the back side, okay? The front has a one-story elevation, period, end of story. The back side goes into the hill 2 stories. It's so easy. But of course they don't want to do that, because that costs more money. And it won't be the massive bulk that they want for curb appeal for a spec house. Flatland style house shoved up on the mountainside. Ugly. Can't believe it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you approve this appeal, you might as well dismiss the planning commission. Let them stay home and just let these employees rubber stamp everything approved. Okay? Tax generators. That's all they see. Tax generators. That comes from this Jacobs woman. Are you listening, Jacobs? Tax generators. Chasing the buck. Serve the people. Let's hear you serve the people. Okay, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Is next.
Mr. Mayor and members of the Town Council, my name is Mike Meyer.
If you can speak and thank you for the record.
My name is Mike Meyer. I am with Greenbrier Homes. We built the 13 homes in Shannon Valley and went through 38 public hearings in 6 years, so I'm familiar with the process here and the difficulties. From our point of view below, we are really concerned about the size of this home in a very visible place. And I'm asking the council to consider several things, particularly in the hillside development standards and guidelines. First, the objectives, and I'm quoting, maintain the natural appearance of the hillsides, protect ridgelines from development, maintain rural, natural, open space character of hillsides, and ensure development does not dominate, but rather blends and achieves harmony between the natural and built environment. Clearly, this house, from our point of view, doesn't do that. Second, the guidelines encourage discussion between the neighbors and the applicant. The applicant did not come to the Shannon Valley Ranch Homeowners Association at all. I went up and talked to the applicant after the Planning Commission hearing, and I asked if we couldn't go to a one-story house and put about 36 box trees on the hill below the house so that they could see over it, but we didn't have to look at this monster, because and they didn't do either. In fact, the landscape plan that is designed here doesn't work. You see on that middle upper plan, you see these big trees across the back of the house. That's impossible. If you look at the landscape plan, there are 7 trees, and they're 24-gallon trees, which doesn't exist. That'd be very, very small trees. The design as they show it has nothing to do with the reality of the landscape plan. So on balance, I'm asking that you guys support the Planning Commission and the neighbors and deny this appeal of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have a question, please. If you'll come back from Vice Mayor McNutt. A question for Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, I wanted to make sure, you've seen their expanded landscape plan that they were talking about tonight, the newest version?
I looked at the plan that is presented in the package. It's the same one that was presented at the Planning Commission.
Okay. And so, from your point of view, that doesn't really solve the problem that you're talking about?
Not even remotely.
Okay. And then, as I stood down in your neighborhood and looked up, what I did notice from my point of view, was that the house on the left and the right of this property seemed to be pretty well screened by landscaping. So is it your opinion that it can be, if that it's possible if they choose to?
It is my opinion that it can be screened in much the same way as both neighbors and the whole street, in fact. And it would be better if the house were lowered a little bit, and you can do it by putting the garage underneath the house.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker. There's Alex.
I'm Alex Loip, and I'm 530 Santa Rosa Drive, so I'm on the left side of the property in discussion. And I would just want to mention that in the meeting with the Planning Commission in August, I think from our point of view, there come clear recommendations out of there that says, please reduce the 3-story building to a 2-story building, come close to an 18 feet roof level, and get the neighbors involved in your redesign. So none of those things happened, and I think that's why the decision in last February was unanimous, because they couldn't see that there was any attempt made to make some major changes to the design, which could have been done. My house on the left looks like a 1-story building. It's a 2-story building. It's about 4,700 square feet and has, in addition, a 4-car garage. So it is a fairly large structure, but from the street, you see it as a 1-story building with a cropped roof line. So I have a flat roof, and I'm below 18 feet from the street level. And there's no reason something like that in this design could be accomplished. I don't see a reason why I don't have a 3-story structure. It could be accommodated in a 2-story fairly easily.
Thank you. Well, yes, we do, from Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. When I drove up there, I did see your house, and when I talked about a 1-story profile from the street, you were the house about whom I was speaking. I didn't know it was you at that time. Yeah. I could ask this of staff and of the applicant, and I probably will, but from your perspective, is there anything distinctive in the applicant's piece of property and the ridge line that with which he's working that is different from the ridge line portion with which you worked?
I don't think so.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ron Casper.
Good evening, Mayor Wasserman and Town Council. I'm Ron Casper. I live at 531 Santa Rosa Drive. And I'd like just to point out a few facts. One, first off, this is a 3-story house, not a 2-story house. It's 6,346 square feet under roof. Huge house. I question Mike when he was out at the site also, why the Planning Commission wasn't re-involved in this decision-making and why they're not here in today's meeting. We, the neighbors up there, we believe it's a significant ridgeline. Maybe it's not listed as a significant ridgeline here, but if you continue on Blossom Hill, and I think that study was done before a lot of this property was really developed, it is a significant ridgeline. It's got views from both down off of Blossom Hill Road and Hicks Road. And my last comment is that, as Alex has commented, why not make it a 1-story house that looks like it's a 1-story from the road and put the 2nd story down in the ground, which I think would accommodate all the wishes of all the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That's all the cards we have on this, so we'll close that portion and we'll bring the... I'm sorry, I turned your card over. Selfia Halim, am I close?
Hi, good evening.
Hi. Go ahead and lower that down. There you go.
My name is Sylvia Halim, 511 Santa Rosa Drive. I guess I'd like to iterate what my main concerns are. It's mainly the height, and the 2-story building doesn't go well with the topography of the land. I think on the hillside, it's really necessary to do that and to blend with the neighborhood. And another thing that I'm kind of confused about is the pole and the picture. So this is the picture of the house, and this is the poles that we saw. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. There it is. Okay. So the pole actually, if you see, this has been lowered from the last time. So looking at this height, it's not too bad. Okay. But in here, actually, the lower one is representing the roof of the first story, right? And the roof of the first story is only 4 feet from the ground. Now I'm looking and looking. I don't understand how this can be.
I'll interject for just a minute. That's because the first story there that you see is underground.
I see.
There's 4 feet above the ground.
So it's underground, so they will excavate a lot of this. So the plan is not clear to me, and I don't see in the plan how it's going to be excavated, how the berm is going to look like. So this seems like a significant change that we have to review. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that concludes the public portion there. We'll now turn back to the appellant for up to 5 minutes.
Our building's back. Slides, thanks. Okay, I'm going to talk about a number of the items that we brought up. Again, the original, actually, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the landscaping. What I mentioned was what we presented to planning was very preliminary. And what we're going to be doing is in our consultation with a few landscape architects, we're going to do extensive landscaping. I actually spoke with Mr. Mayor after the commission meeting, and he had some great ideas on which size box to use, and he actually gave me the name of a landscape architect to use, which I have contacted. And we are going to have a number of larger trees in the back and in the front. Everything we're showing here is very diagrammatic because we wanted to show the architecture of the building. We could look into adding more below, but as far as we can tell, this is the lowest that we can drop, and the only play we can really do would be with the roof line. The gentleman that spoke that has the house on the other side, that looks like a one-story, that's a two-story. His frontage is a lot wider than ours, and so he actually has more room to go linearly to get all his square footage in, which is quite an extensive amount of square footage. We don't have that. Plus, we even reduced it further back than the required setbacks to provide view corridors for the neighbors across the street. So we're really, really limited to one small pocket area where we can develop. And if we take any more square footage out, we have to completely lose a story, which then we will not be able to have a residence. We will have a much smaller residence. And the owners have worked very hard with the architect, with the new landscape architects that we're hiring if this gets approved. And we would really like to get this going because it's now been in the Planning Commission for 5 years, going back and forth and not really having a resolution. We have accommodated as much as we could, and the design will now really be impacted if we do anything else. It will not look like a beautifully architecturally designed house. It will look like a box, and we are we have a lot of design constraints, as I said. We can't go any further because it's this slope, and we don't have the frontage like the neighbors have.
I'm sorry, you said it can't go any further because it will what?
We have that line that we can't go any further because it will be the 30%. We'll go past the 30% slope.
Okay. Okay, thank you very
So
much.
we're just developing in that zone, and as they say, oh, it's a 2-story, 3-story, we have no more room to get the programmable spaces, and we've already cut a lot off. And it's not 3 stories, it's 2 stories. And from the street, like she was mentioning, that it looks 4 feet on one side, is because we've sunk it as much as possible.
Thank you. I don't want to cut you off. You've said what you wish to say?
Yes.
Okay. If you'll stay there for just a moment in case there's any further questions from council. None. Okay, you can have a seat, and that closes the public portion. Appellants and publics and supporters and protesters, that's all done. We're now going to turn to council for some internal discussion. and ultimately a motion, which is the goal here. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification. This has been in the works for 5 years, but it's not been a contiguous 5 years. That there was an original proposal that was denied both at Planning Commission and Council level. Then there were some years intervening, and then we've had a period of time here recently where a number of continuances have been requested by the applicant. And so I would not want us to kind of have the sense that somehow this has been a long and drawn out process that the town has been responsible for. I think that from my perspective, I also want to clarify that, and perhaps staff can help me with this, that the Hillside guidelines, standards and guidelines, which we approved in 2004, occurred subsequent, obviously, to the development of the Alta Vista subdivision. And I dare say that probably the subdivision wouldn't exist today if the guidelines and standards had been in existence at that point in time. No way could we have actually had a road that ran the ridgeline. And so to me, I think it is a very attractive residential component to our community. But we have evolved our thinking since then in relationship to the hillsides and to the ridges in particular. Therefore, we have somewhat a hybrid as we look at the design standards and guidelines, a hybrid that does not apply exactly to what it is we were intending in 2004, and I appreciate the two planning commissioners who are adamant about the definition of the hillside as the definition of this particular ridgeline as one of the significant ridgelines, and that therefore the direction towards the 18-foot height as predicated on that particular designation. However, if we are going to abide by our own rules, then that body would have had to say we are going to designate this as a significant ridgeline, since it is not so designated in our standards. The other thing I think is that then to insist on 18 feet is not realistic, particularly given the fact that other than this and I think one more lot, pretty much Alta Vista is built out. So to clarify that point, yes, it was it was a unanimous decision of 4 individuals in the Planning Commission. The message to me was we've run out of time. That's really what was the significant issue for me in interpreting what was clearly in the verbatim minutes. We have run out of time. I got the distinct impression, particularly from the chair, that there was an interest in moving the project forward, but there was no possibility that night to make that happen. There needed to be more work. I'm not inclined right now to make a motion, but my orientation is it needs more work. And I think that means that there has to be some time allotted to allow the applicant, or the appellant in this case, to work with staff, because there has not been any real progress towards changing this current proposal to accommodate a lot of the things that the Planning Commission genuinely and appropriately were requesting. So that's my general orientation, and I'd be curious what other council members feel at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
A question for staff. We either uphold the decision or overturn the decision of the Planning Commission, correct?
Basically, yes. But you could also remand if you're going to reverse. You have a number of options.
Okay. In order to overturn their decision, having been on the other side of it, I never really dealt with it from that perspective. There's no real new evidence other than what the Planning Commission heard, because we're looking at the exact same plan. Is that correct?
Basically, as I understand, you're looking at the same plan.
So under what conditions could we, if that were our...
I haven't actually read this in a while, but basically, council in the town code must make findings with regard to the planning commission decision with regard to the matter. If you are considering overturning the decision, one ground would be new facts, and I think you've correctly pointed out, unless somebody else can identify facts that were not presented as grounds to reverse the decision, new facts that were not present at before the planning commission. Another ground is that there's a policy question that is raised by this application, which the Planning Commission lacked the authority to address, but council does have the authority to address. An example would be a permit streamlining issue. The testimony to date is that the commission ran up against the permit streamlining barrier, even though they felt that it was possible to work with the applicant. They didn't think they could do so any longer because of the permit streamlining deadline. They didn't deny the project merely because of the deadline. They denied it because of the project, but more time would have allowed them to deal with it, but they didn't have that. You do. That's a policy issue for council. I will have to take a look at the code to see what the third ground is, but those are the two key grounds.
Error abuse.
Correct. An error abuse of discretion. I haven't heard any testimony to that effect. Perhaps council members have.
Councilmember Rice, continue.
Okay, if I, to follow on, I tend to be where I heard basically Councilmember Brzezinski is I think this needs more work. Give me a little primer on the remand that you referred to, if you would be so kind.
Well, if council were inclined to grant the appeal, reverse the decision, breathe new life into the application, but not approve it in its current form, council can either give direction to staff for modifications that would bring it back to council for final approval, or you can remand the application to the Planning Commission with directions to the Planning Commission regarding how the project needs to be modified. You can do it in general terms, specific terms, whatever council feels is appropriate, and leave it to the Planning Commission to work with the applicant to perfect the application and hopefully reach the point where it can be approved.
And we're not under any, then they're not under any time
Correct.
Constraint.
They're not. That's past permit streamlining.
Okay. I'm good for the moment.
Thank you. I'll look. Seeing no hands at the moment, I'll chime in. I think there's more work to be done too. I don't think, as Mr. Brzezinski said, I don't think that 18-foot number is necessarily something in every case that needs to be met. But in hearing the testimonies and reviewing the facts here, especially from what happened from the last Planning Commission meeting until this time, it seems that some flattening of the roof is an option. Some more cut is allowed, and some additional landscaping could be done. So I think those are three reasonable areas, but as is our policy not to design from the dais, I'm not making a motion yet. I'm certainly in favor of the direction that I've heard two others say, that there's more to be done. And I think there's a couple, three things that can be reasonably done that I've heard between architect and staff to bring this more into compliance. I do want to say for the record, as is noted in our staff report when the comment was made about 5 years, this process being in the system, back in June 2005, the property owners submitted a new application to the town, and it was done to achieve compliance with the hillside development standards and guidelines. Most of the times, a project takes so long is because it's not originally submitted in total compliance with the existing guidelines. I can tell all those Los Gatans listening out there tonight that if you submit plans that meet the height and the mass and the setbacks and all the other requirements, you're going to have, may not be clear sailing, but you're going to have very, very few problems. In addition, the applicants asked for continuations from October to December 2008, and from December 2008 to January 2009, and from January 2009 to March 1st of 2009. So it's been a while, but there's reasons for that. That's what I've got to say, and I'll turn to Councilmember Rice.
I'll give this a shot. I'm going to make a motion to remand this back to the Planning Commission for further work. I'm going to give some specific direction. First, I think this is a textbook case for the use of our cellar policy where using square footage in a cellar in lieu of visible mass. I think I'm not wedded to an 18-foot height, but I think that the view presented from the street needs to be more of a one-story view as opposed to the two, and on the back side, 2 as opposed to 3. Square footage is not the issue to me, how many square feet this house ends up. I think it's a beautiful house. I just don't think it's sited correctly in this location. And because you don't know what'll come down the road as far as remodels or anything else in that subdivision, I would like to recognize that that area is a significant ridgeline.
Okay. Is a motion being made?
I'm going to second the motion.
Okay. Councilmember Spector.
I agree with everything that Mr. Rice said, almost. Anyway, for all the bases for the motion, and I am not convinced that when this comes back to us from the Planning Commission, or when it goes to the Planning Commission, that there's going to be any significant change. Hope breeds eternal. However, it has been to the Planning Commission numerous times. It's been to the Council. There has not been any significant or any change. So I don't know if anything's going to come back, but give it a shot, because what we're looking at here, we're looking at not only the variables that the maker of the motion pointed out, which is a one-story type profile from the front, a two-story type profile from the back, increasing the cellar, but also to examine things like the pitch of the roof, the height of the ceilings, the square footage. I don't know, as I sit here, I can't recall from these voluminous documents what the current square footage is, but I do remember the neighbor next door had almost 5,000 square feet plus a 4-car garage, and that house sits very nicely. So I'm seconding the motion. I'm going to encourage the applicant. I'm not positive. I'm not convinced that it's going to come back much better. I want to commend the Planning Commission for their patience. I want to commend the Planning Commission, especially for their August meeting when they came out with a laundry list of potential variables or changes, just as we are doing here. And we'll see what happens.
Thank you. And before we go further here to the next 3 hands in a row that are up, Mr. Rice, would you please paraphrase your motion for the record? Simplify what you would like.
To remand it back to the Planning Commission for redesign with the specific instructions of getting more of a one-story appearance from the front and 2 from the back, that looking for ways to do that, including expansion of the use of the cellar. I'll use Councilwoman Spector's roof comment in there, and that I would also note that that ridgeline is a significant ridgeline.
Thank you. And Councilmember Spector, is that fine with your second?
Yes, that is consistent with my second.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Mr. Korb first, just in case he has something that the rest of our council needs to hear first.
Well, I'm hardly more important than Councilmember Brzezinski, but I do want to point out that that there is a point of clarification regarding the motion. I will be ultimately, depending on how council votes, doing a resolution that will finalize the terms of council's action, so I want to be clear about this. You said that you weren't wedded to the 18-foot limit. However, if council identifies this ridgeline as significant under the terms of the hillside guidelines, then that requires that the height not exceed 18 feet. I just want to make sure that you're...
And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Councilman Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I typically am inclined not to remand to the Planning Commission once it's gotten through the Planning Commission and been vetted so thoroughly as this application has in the course of years. But I think that in the current form, even though Councilwoman Spector has indicated some skepticism about the possibility of a change, I believe that the applicant is motivated to actually produce some project on this lot, and so that will occur. The only issue I have with the motion is this last question of designation of the significant ridgeline, because again, this ridgeline was developed in the 80s, completely developed in the 80s. I don't see what that gains us now, because at this point in time, each application is going to have to be evaluated on its own merits, as we will in all cases. But to now say this is significant, given the kind of the legal issues that we're dealing with, as Mr. Core pointed out, now it says 18 foot. That's the max. And when you're saying that, the intention is that if something is going to break the hill, the ridge line, if a project is going to be visible atop the ridge line, then it must be limited to 18 feet. And I am not one to feel at this point in time, given all the recommendations made, that it is mandatory that we limit the applicant to 18 feet. Definitely, the height is going to be reduced from everything we've said, but I think that changes the issue here in some way, and so I would have difficulty supporting that component. Everything else, I feel very comfortable with.
Thank you. Before we go back to you, Mr. Korb, Vice Mayor McNutt. Mr. Korb.
I just want to point out that however the decision is reached with regard to the ridgeline, you're going to be interpreting the hillside guidelines in a manner that will affect future applications. For example, if you say this is a significant ridgeline, then Councilmember Brzezinski is absolutely right. It is significant for all future applications affecting the ridgeline. 18 feet is the height limit, and if there is a possibility of it, and I haven't explored it, the first thing that has to be done is to try to disappear the house below the ridgeline, but 18 feet is the outside height. If you were to remand this without direction with regard to a significant ridgeline component, and say that the house should not exceed 18 feet, for other reasons of design, then you're not making a finding with regard to the interpretation of the guidelines specifically, because you haven't allowed somebody to exceed 18 feet. So basically, it's the status quo. Staff is interpreting the guidelines currently to say that the rule regarding 18 feet only applies to significant ridge lines. If you were to say that the house can exceed 18 feet, then you're saying that the guidelines with regard to the guideline language with regard to ridge lines is in fact exactly what staff says it is. It only applies to significant ridge lines, not to all ridge lines.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McNutt. Now that's clarified.
I'm so sorry that I had him speak first, because I got totally lost in that. So where I am is that I do think this needs redesign. I do think it needs to go back to the Planning Commission. I am hesitant about some of the language that Mr. Rice was using in terms of one-story appearance. I'm not sure that we need to force it to be one-story at the street level and then dropping down. I do think it needs to be lower, and I really have problems with designating that as a significant ridgeline when it is already filled with homes, lovely homes and streets and so on. this property has got a two-story house kind of on a hill on the right-hand side, and that kind of low-slung, sunken one story, appears to be one story on the left side. So, it's kind of needs to be in the middle there. So I would like to ask Mr. Rice, through the mayor, if he would be open to a friendly amendment to his motion to eliminate the designation of this ridge as significant.
Mr. Rice?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
For that.
Then I would like to make that amendment to your motion.
That's acceptable.
And does the seconder, Councilmember Spector?
Whether or not I accept that, I don't think I have any choice, but yes, that's fine. But let me explain what I was going to say. First of all, implied in the motion that Mr. Rice made and I seconded was that it's being returned to the Planning Commission because of the policy, and that policy is that they were under a deadline which the council doesn't have, and therefore returning it to the Planning Commission without the deadline, therefore giving the Planning Commission more time to study this issue and giving the applicant more time to work on the application, one. Secondly, my reading of the standards, the hillside standards, is that you don't need what has been designated as a significant ridge line for the building height standards on pages 34 and 35 to apply. They simply refer to a ridge line. So therefore, in a vacuum, these standards do apply, and they make a maximum of 28 feet from the highest to the lowest point and 18 feet from the rooftop to the grade. However, I agree with Mr. Brzezinski that given the fact that this subdivision was approved and almost all the homes built prior to these hillside standards, I think that's a reason not to have the building height standards apply now. But I do certainly agree with Mr. Rice's motion about giving the appearance of a one-story profile from the street and a two-story profile appearance from the back.
Thank you. Mr. Korb.
I'm sorry that it was confusing before. The rules can be confusing, and how you interpret them can be confusing, but you have to understand that what you say will have an effect on future applications. If you're saying that the house should be reduced to 18 feet in height, and you haven't said that yet, so it's unclear.
That's not been said in the motion.
Okay. If you're not saying that, then what you're saying is staff's interpretation is the appropriate interpretation of the guidelines, and that even though that section regarding height just says ridge lines, not significant ridge lines, that staff's interpretation to date is correct. The only other way you could allow the house to exceed 18 feet on a ridge line that is not significant and still think that the height rule applies to ridge lines is to make an exception, which you can do under the guidelines. But in order to do so, you have to cite facts supporting the exception. Of course, Councilmember Spector just did point out a fact, as did Councilmember Brzezinski, that the neighborhood has been developed in a particular manner that could support an exception. But again, the question is, what do you want to do? Do you want to interpret the guidelines in the manner that staff has done so, or in the manner that Councilmember Spector just pointed out, that ridge lines means ridge lines, not significant ridge lines, and no house can exceed 18 feet unless an exception is made?
Mr. Rice, I'm guessing you want to say something.
Well, I would just say I'm comfortable with the motion as it currently stands.
Good.
I think the Planning Commission will have ample direction on where we are with this.
Thank you. I'm supporting the motion as well. Seems we all believe there's more to be done on this project, and there's a few areas in which that can reasonably happen. So I'm going to call for the question if there's no more discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, that passes. That is done.
That does it. I'm directed to return with a resolution, which I will do so before the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Korb. Okay, now on to item number 10. We have Ms. Jennifer Savage from staff giving the report regarding Arnerich Road, which is APN, a whole bunch of them, 537, yada, yada, yada. It's file AN08003. Did you get my yada, yada, Jackie? Okay. It's in the minutes. All right. This is not, are we getting more? Okay, Mr. Korb? Mr. Korb, a question for you, please, before we get the report from Ms. Savage. Everybody out there, please listen to this. If you're interested in item number 10, and it seems quite a few of you are. The recommendation in the staff report says that the Santa Clara County LAFCO has determined that 3 properties to the east of the subject application must be included as part, bless you, as part of the proposed annexation. Given the previous notification for the April 6, 2009 and May 4, 2009 hearings did not include the additional property information, staff recommends the council adopt a resolution rescinding the previously adopted resolution 2009-034. So I just want to let all those people know what it is that staff is recommending and council is considering tonight. Okay? If that'll shorten or lengthen your presentation, this is America, and that's totally up to you. Ms. Savage, you're on.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. As you stated, the project was originally heard on April 6, 2009. Staff had conversations with LAFCO, which they determined that there are properties located to the east of the proposed annexation that are required to be included with the current annexation. And because of that, staff is recommending rescinding the previously approved resolution and directing staff to initiate new proceedings once the map has been revised to include those properties to the east of the proposed annexation. This concludes staff presentation. I am available for any questions.
That was a wonderful length staff presentation. Thank you very, very much. She should do more of those. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you. Let's clarify what initiate new proceedings means.
With annexation processes, the first step with the proceedings is to initiate the annexation proceedings, which includes adoption by the council, a resolution directing, declaring that the proceedings would be initiated and directing staff to do the required notification for the hearing, and then setting a subsequent hearing for the actual protest proceeding.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everyone understands. All we're doing tonight is voting on stopping this and starting fresh, and there'll be more public meetings once we start fresh. Is that correct, Mayor?
That's absolutely correct. Okay.
You're so subtle.
I'm subtle. All right. Now I look to the cards that I have from the public that wish to speak to this matter. You may speak. You know what? We've got so many cards. I'm going to throw in the 2-minute limit instead of the 3 at this time, unless you really, really, really convince me you need beyond that for what we're deciding upon tonight. So let's get this on the road. We've got Michael Kokinos. You'll be speaking first. Polly Zine? She left? Oh, and 24 is on tonight. Okay. Okay. So, Polly, you're out of there. Robert Putti? Puette. I knew that from before. Robert Puette, you're up there next. Come on up to the front. And Lorraine Hirsch.
Let me know when I should start.
Take it away.
All right. Mayor Wasserman, Vice Mayor McNutt, Council, thank you again very much for spending some time to listen to my brief presentation this evening. I wanted to begin this evening by thanking you very much for addressing the concerns that I brought forth at the last opportunity to speak. I appreciate your efforts to bring clarity to the issues that I brought to your attention, so thank you very much. I also want to go on record as saying I agree with the staff's report that the islands will, in fact, be formed as a result of the annexation as it's currently being proposed, and as a result of this, it's a direct violation of LAFCO's policies and as such needs to be stopped. In terms of the more recent staff report, I disagree with staff that the Cortez-Knox-Hertzberg document does not have a clear definition of island. I would encourage folks to go back and look at that because it does. I want to start my presentation briefly by talking about how the annexation will, in fact, form an island. So I assume I pressed the green, okay? The subject area is the area that I brought to people's attention last week. What I've done is is the white one. Okay, what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and done a plot-by-plot demonstration to see how this actually evolves. So the area of concern is what I mentioned last week to be the peninsula. I'm going to go ahead and enlarge that, and that's the area of the concern in an exploded area. So on a parcel-by-parcel basis, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fill in the parcels and actually show how this island will be formed as a result of the annexation. So this first parcel right here is the parcel for the applicant, Mr. Puett, and adjacent to that is the parcel of Mr. Kaplan. Going ahead, moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and fill these in and show you that as we move forward, the parcel that just came up is actually the parcel that is the one that staff has requested that be included in the new annexation effort, but you'll see it doesn't actually impact the formation of the island, because as soon as this next parcel comes in, it clearly blocks the executive area, and then as well.
Please let his time, since he brought this issue to us originally, and he has this PowerPoint, please let his time continue.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that extra time.
Put on another minute, because he would have come prepared for 3 minutes with PowerPoint, which are really impressive to me.
So you can see how this annexation, as it proceeds, creates an island. And therein lies the whole basis of my presentation. So to the extent this little parcel right here is brought in to the annexation effort, it really doesn't impact the formation of the island. So that's a point that I really wanted to bring to the attention of council. You can clearly see, based on LAFCO's definition of island in the Knox-Cortez-Hertzberg bill that I actually spoke with some of the LAFCO board members about, who presented me with that documentation, there is a clear definition. It's defined based on how land is quote-unquote surrounded, and they have a very clear definition for what surrounded land means, and that's from where they get the derivation of the term island. So I wanted to bring this to your attention to show you, again, to the extent we just bring this piece in, it clearly still blocks the corridor, that peninsula, with the result being, as I mentioned earlier, the formation of an island. So thank you very much again for your time and attention to this matter.
Thank you. Mr. Puett, followed by Lorraine Hirsch, and then Carrie Perzo.
Thank you. Bob Puett, 17505 Hicks Road. My wife and I own one of these properties, as Mr. Coquino has pointed out. I'm speaking for myself and clearly on behalf of the annexation. We will be complying with the recommendations of LAFCO and the city, and adding the 3 additional properties, 2 open space properties and the Frankel Hirsch property. I believe when we make this change, as far as we understand in working with LAFCO and the city, we will be in compliance with all of the city guidelines. The assessed value of all the properties requesting annexation is well in excess of 50% of the affected properties, and that's pointed out in your report. We very much are asking to proceed with the annexation so that we can join the town of Los Gatos. We are in the process of redoing all the drawings again. We will submit those to the county surveyor for approval, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, and request your support to be on the city council agenda as soon as possible so we can, again, start the hearing process to get this annexation done. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Puett. Lorraine Hirsch.
Hi, Lorraine Hirsch, 17491 Hicks Road. We're going to be protesting the annexation, but we have one specific point I want to make tonight that's just incomprehensible to us. I brought my property tax bills. We own 2 contiguous parcels, and in the discussion of the next annexation, you've only included 1. And to have 2 adjacent parcels under 2 different jurisdictions seems to me unduly burdensome for us. So I wonder if you could address that. Just assure me that you will be bringing in both parcels, that, contiguous parcels that we own.
Sure. We can't give you any assurances here. Does staff wish to make any comment to that effect, or to simply get back to the speaker?
The proposed annexation map would be reviewed by the county surveyor, who would confirm boundaries both for the town and the
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that. For my point.
The county will make the final
decision about
Staff can discuss with you
Wanna
where
do
the
this
map.
offline?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, before you leave, if you can get a card.
Okay, I can give her a
Communication.
call.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Lorraine Hirsch. Carrie Perzo.
All right. Hi again, I'm Carrie Perzo. My husband and I live at 14050 Shannon Road. And I just had to come up here and say, maybe this is because I worked in human resources my whole career, but I just had to say that for 20 years, my husband and I lived in Santa Clara County in Los Altos. We live in the county here, in Los Gatos. And the process that I just saw with item number 9 and the process that I witnessed over the last 8 years with the Greenbrier project is precisely one of the reasons why we want to be part of the town. The way that you guys go through and look at the design plans, the decisions, the thoroughness that you take, it's civilized, it's respectful. It's just a really good process, and that doesn't happen in the county. So I want to be, for a lot of reasons, but a big reason, I want to be in the town of Los Gatos so that we could be part of this process where there's greater adherence to building codes and to land use codes.
Thank you. And you don't need to stop. If you have more nice things to say, you
Oh, I would have brought out my PowerPoint presentation saying you're great, but no, but really, I'm sincere about that. It's great.
We appreciate you taking the time to say that, and of course what you said. And I think it's also important, not only, you recognize the time and consideration that's given to these complex issues.
Yeah.
And then, like I like to say, and Wendy, you're newer here, but our Director of Community Development, probably 99% of the applications go right on through without any involvement over the counter within a reasonable amount of time, just like any other city and municipality around. But you're right, there's special attention given to those special cases. And thank you for your appreciation of what takes place in this town.
I mean, it's tedious, right? And it's arduous sometimes, but it's the right way to do it. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to say Velimir. Is that correct? Yeah. So what's the last letter in your last name, Velimir? Sulich. Okay. So that's a C.
C with a mark
accent.
Pronounced like CH.
Got it. Velimir Sulich. You are up, and you're going to be followed by Chris Durbin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff. I'm Velimir Sulich, representing applicant. We're engineers for this project, and I just want to put for the record, we have numerous meetings with the LAFCO staff and county surveyors and your staff. And the annexation was brought up before you in the first time, was all approved by all those agencies. Now, I didn't come here to dispute Mr. Kokinos, but I think your attorney of town can advise you that the Cortese Act of 2000 is actually encouraging towns and cities to annex all the lands of unincorporated areas within urban city boundaries. And this, what Mr. Kokinos presented on the pinpoint presentation, it is true, it's island, but that does not preclude you to annex the territories under Cortese Act of 2000. Actually, they encourage that the cities and towns annex all those unincorporated areas within urban service area. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
And I do want to also say that we're going to finish our revised exhibits A and B within 10 days, 2 weeks.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Chris Durbin.
Chris Durbin, 14480 Arnowich Road. Good evening. It's probably not an appropriate time to protest against this annexation, but I guess since it's going to come up again, that I just wanted to say that I'm opposed to it, just based on the grounds of keeping the rural character of Arnowich Road. I love the peace and quiet there, and I'm against any annexation that will possibly allow subdivision of the properties and more houses. I'm further up Arnowich Road, so I wouldn't be affected directly by, say, a subdivision down by Shannon and Hicks, but nevertheless, it's going to, I'm sort of categorically opposed to it, I guess you could say. So that's all I wanted to say. I guess it's probably not appropriate to say too much right now, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, that ends the public discussion on item number 10, and I'll now look to council. And Mr. Korb, we have a recommendation, and you're looking for a motion or a consensus?
A motion.
Motion. All right, council, some discussion and a motion. Mr. Brzezinski?
I'll make the motion prior to discussion to adopt the resolution rescinding resolution number 2009-034, terminating the annexation proceedings and directing staff to initiate new proceedings.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion made by Mr. Brzezinski, a second made by Councilmember Spector, and now I'll look for any conversation. Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, vote say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. We now go on to item number 11.
Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse myself at this point.
Oh, yes.
But I will be...
Mr. Brzezinski, because of his proximity to the project in item number 11, needs to recuse himself at this time.
But I will be in the back room and
barely
return
missed.
subsequent for the last... for the consent items.
All right. Somebody please remember to remind me to bring him back. No? Yes? Bless you. All right, we're good. Let's go to number 11. Number 11 is to consider a request to demolish a convalescent facility and 3 pre-1941 single-family residents and approval on a planned development change the zone. And that's it. We have Suzanne Davis is back. Thank you. If you could please give your staff report.
I don't have
just for the record, I know that your staff report had a lot more in it than the previous staff report. So I'm not saying hers was better. Yours was perfect for the length that it was.
She was just going to make this one shorter.
I know, and I just didn't want to let her know that. She won't.
Actually, I don't have a detailed staff report. The council considered this at a previous meeting and indicated an intent to approve the project with a reduced density. The applicant had offered to eliminate 1 unit from the project, and the council also indicated an acceptance of studio units over 2 units, the garage on lot 13 and 16. The applicant has redone the FAR table, which was attached to a desk item that you received. The FAR, and this shows FARs for each individual lot as well as for the overall project. And one thing I did want to point out as we are talking about FAR, we are using the net area, and what the net is the property minus the street and areas that aren't actually part of the individual lots. So the floor area ratio using the net is a really accurate picture of floor area relative to lot size.
Thank you. And you explained that well in the desk item that council should all have already.
And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. And that was a wonderful staff report that you gave. Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none at this time. We had closed the public hearing to all people that had spoken previously, so I have one card from Mr. Cunningham. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you. I'm sorry.
If you could please speak in the microphone.
I'm sorry I couldn't be here last week or at the last meeting. My schedule just wouldn't allow it. I sent a letter to you all, and I sent a letter to the Planning Commission. If you have any doubts as to whether or not this is the best possible use of the land that's going to be available when the convalescent hospital is demolished, you've got to vote no tonight. And that's because after this, we're only going to be rearranging deck chairs. You realize this comes to you from a planning commission after one trip to the planning commission, and that planning commission was down 3 members. They're all great, but 3 very thoughtful members who were recused from this. So this is a big development that really has not had the tires kicked the way it needs to. There are a number of problems with the development, and the glistening may make it easier to use this.
Mr. Cunningham, if you could take the mic out of the holder so that we can hear you and it can be recorded. Thank you.
Sure. There are two major problems with this project because of the volume, and that's the density and the traffic. At the last discussion, Mr. Mayor was very interested in the notion of pervious space, which of course is huge in relation to an existing unusable convalescent hospital. But what you all need to focus on is usable space. I suggest that there is no place to play catch. There's no place to kick a soccer ball. There's no place to play frisbee in what is supposed to be like a neighborhood in Los Gatos. This is a condo development, and there are just too many homes in too few spaces. You've kicked these FAR numbers around. The fact of the matter is, no matter how you slice them, I've used medians rather than means, but it's twice as busy or congested as the neighborhood. And Councilmember Rice, you were interested in the accessory living units. I think your impulse was that maybe we're putting too many people in too small a space. You are. That's what's going on here. One of the suggestions that really needs to be tested against the current proposal is egress and ingress onto Los Gatos Boulevard, which is the arterial, not Caldwell Avenue, which is being used by not just the neighbors and the distant neighbors, but every cyclist, runner, stroller pusher, dog walker in Los Gatos, because Caldwell is the first opportunity you have to get off of Los Gatos Boulevard and still get to the high school or downtown. The win-win-win model here is to redesign this project on the model of Bella Vista Court. And if you look at some of the maps that are in your materials, you could see that you could basically take the Bella Vista Court model and flip it onto the convalescent hospital land. Bella Vista Court is 7 houses. It's a cul-de-sac. Run that cul-de-sac from Los Gatos Boulevard.
Thank you. You need to, if you'll hold on a minute here, we'll see if council has any questions of you. No? I'm interested when you were saying the Bella Vista model. I believe we're talking about the same one by the same developer as far as that goes.
Right.
And just to finish that thought that you were saying.
Okay, so there are 2 Bella Vistas now in Los Gatos. There's Bella Vista Homes, which I used to think of as Villa Felice, and in fact, I've lived in town since 1970, and I used to play football with Mark Persano on the big lawn next to the pool with.
If you'll finish that thought, though, for us.
So the fact of the matter is that Bella Vista Homes is exactly the wrong kind of model. Pretty though they are. Those are very pretty buildings. Bella Vista Court, which is the planned development that's just over the fence from what this development would be, those are nice homes that don't feel like condos because they're not, with ample yards, bigger setbacks, and it's a true neighborhood. And it's a perfect model for what should be here now. I suspect that's why that model was adopted the last time this neighborhood was considered for an intensified use.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cunningham. Seeing no other questions, that closes the public portion of that. We'll now look to council for discussion regarding what's before us tonight. Okay, I will start things off with a motion to make the mitigated negative declaration. I don't even need to go to the attachment. To make the mitigated negative declaration is what I will start things out with.
You need a second.
Now I'm
Second.
Sorry. I have a second, and we're looking for a discussion regarding that. No, Councilmember Spector.
If everyone is going to be so quiet, I will not be supporting the motion. I was looking for additional information to see the effect of the reduction of one home to the entire project. And still, we don't have, I called it last time, a win-win. I saw that on the PowerPoint. It was win-win-win. And what I said last time was that We have people with very good objectives. We have a developer, an applicant who wants to fix the Thrash House, get rid of the convalescent hospital, and build homes. That's good. And we have Mr. Cunningham this evening, but also other people who have residents who have sent us letters and emails who are concerned about the density and intensity. And so am I. And I don't think it has to be either or. I think that you can have a housing development that complies with our ordinances. This one does not. It's too high. It exceeds the FARs. The lots are too small. And it violates about the setbacks. For almost every single home, it violates our land use ordinances. And the way that we're able to do this is through the PD, the plan development. And if we as a town, those ordinances were developed through public hearings, by consideration by a planning commission, by councils before us. If we don't want those ordinances anymore, then we should consider them and modify them. But while they exist, they are good planning, and we should not erode them through the PD process. We should either say, okay, we want to abide by them, or no, then let's change them, let's have public hearings, because the way we're doing it now, it's not consistent planning, it's not good planning, it's not transparent planning, and it's not sending a good message to the people who are coming before us, and it's not giving good land use to future generations. We've had it, let's give it to our future people too.
Thank you, Mrs. Spector, and I certainly understand what you said. I remember when Villa Visona came before us on next to Courtside by the tennis court, not the tennis courts, the railroad tracks, Highway 85, and I saw that project. And when it came forward and was ultimately approved, it was approved on a 4-to-1 vote, and I was the one that voted against it. And I didn't like the setbacks and the zero lot lines that they used there, and I've gone back since then. And I still am not pleased with what is there. When this project came before me, I thought, is this another Villa Visona? Is this another similar type property? And then I went and looked at Bella Vista, which used to be Villa Felice, as Mr. Cunningham said. I remember dining there as well. And I went and looked at that because when that project came before this council, I thought, is this too dense? So it was borderline for me. But what made the difference was design. We have a PD as a way of, I guess circumventing is the best word. It doesn't have a good connotation to do, but it's an existing item that we have. Sometimes I agree with it, sometimes I haven't in my 7 years. In this particular case, because of the configuration of the lots, the sizes of the lots, the quality of design that I know exists in here, and the neighborhood that I envision will be there, I'm okay with this. It's because of that I supported this originally, and I'm making the motion now. I have seen homes that are below the FAR, and they look too massive. I have seen homes above the FAR, and they looked okay. The previous application before us this evening, I think it was item number 9, had a FAR of 0.04. 0.04, and we said, make it smaller, make it shorter. So FARs are guidelines, PDs are ways that developments are done in special circumstances, and I think this particular one, because of the design, is such a circumstance. I was very pleased at the last meeting that we took the number of homes from 20 down to 19 and spread those few thousands of square feet along properties 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to increase the setbacks to each of those. And that's all I've got to say. Council, any further comments? Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just take this opportunity then to reiterate some of the points that I made last time as to why I am supportive of this project. And remember that we had many people here last time who, immediate neighbors who came who were also supportive of the project. And they didn't feel they had to come tonight, I guess, since they wouldn't have an opportunity to speak. But, you know, the neighborhood on Caldwell, these are small homes. They're in small lots. The garages are right up on the property line. We wouldn't allow any of those to be built today. I myself live in a house that would not be able to be built today because of the ordinances that we have in place. I think the benefits of the plan development in terms of it did go through historic preservation, it did go through planning commission, it's gotten a green light, it is preserving a very significant historical asset in our community, it's adding 2 below market units that we need, it's adding a variety to our housing stock. Not everybody needs to have a big yard, and I think that it's important that you accommodate all kinds of ways that people like to live their lives. And I think this is going to be a huge improvement. I'm very comfortable with this and ready to vote on all the motions that you're in a position to start making after we vote on this one.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, we have a motion. And was there a second? Is there a question from Mr. Korb?
Yes, given the discussion that's already occurred, may I make a suggestion that you suspend the motion for the time being, ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance, and then afterwards I'll make a suggestion regarding a modification of your motion?
So you want to read the title now before we go on to the next steps?
Correct.
Okay. Jackie, Ms. Rose, please do so.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending the town code affecting a zone change from R-1D LHP to R-1D LHP PD and RM5-12 PD for property located at 371 Los Gatos Boulevard.
Now, my recommendation is that the motion be amended to move the recommendations in the staff report A, B, C, E, and F. D has already been done. It doesn't require a motion.
As one?
Correct.
Okay.
And that will result in all the actions that need to be taken tonight.
Okay. Thank you. I will make that motion that A, B, C, and F are approved as recommended.
That's fine with the seconder as well.
Did you say E too? You didn't have E.
I didn't say E. Sorry. A, B, C, E, and F.
Okay.
That's fine with the seconder?
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? No. Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes 3-1.
Now, let me just remind council and the public that council has introduced the ordinance. The final action will be the final adoption of the ordinance, which will return to council on another date.
Thank you. We now have the consent items pulled by Citizen Ray, numbers 6 and 8, and getting back Mr. Przinsky. Number 6 is to adopt resolution authorizing the town manager to apply for Transportation Development Act Article funds from the MTC.
Mitchell Avenue, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Mitchell Avenue. Okay. I want to tell you what is wrong with this action. I've never heard of a sidewalk built out of asphalt, street asphalt is all, dubbed a sidewalk. That's a street walk or something else. And I can't believe that anybody in their right mind would recommend in the town of Los Gatos on Mitchell Avenue, which is a nice little single-family neighborhood, recommend to put in an asphalt walkway. If I lived there, I would sue you. for what you're doing to the property values of my home and the neighborhood. And directly across the street, guess what? There's a big realtor sign from Pinnell. 3-lot subdivision coming. What is that going to do to that 3-lot new subdivision, okay? When in goes a black walkway in place of a concrete sidewalk. It's unbelievable. I mean, just picture the ugliness of a black walkway in a single-family neighborhood. Again, I can't believe anybody in their right mind would recommend it. So, I urge you to put a hold on this for a couple of weeks and give Caperso, our new man, he's evidently so new he can't figure out what Los Gatos is all about, give him a chance to get out there and measure it. It's about 70 or 80 feet is all it is. And you got $60,000 awarded. How can you not get 80 foot of sidewalk for $60,000? How can you not? And none of it makes sense. Totally nonsensical. So postpone it. Give the staff a chance to measure it and come to you with a sensible argument, not a nonsensical. For the good of Los Gatos and for the good of Mitchell Avenue and for the good of Fisher School, a $25 million remodel just right smack there, slumalizing Mitchell Avenue with a blacktop walkway. You know, I've only been here 10 years in Los Gatos, but I really believe it's a special place. Well, we have this, now we have a guy from San Jose and a guy from Santa Cruz.
Thank
Maybe
you.
they don't think it's a special place.
Item number 6. Now you're on to item number 8. Citizen Ray, while you're there, let's just handle that one. That's regarding the minutes of our previous council meeting on April 20th.
Yes. The minutes. How can I possibly criticize the clerk administrator during the clerk's week? Okay? That's like being a Grinch at Christmas. So I want to tell you, Jackie ain't the best, but she ain't the worst. So, I pass. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, council, we have consent items 6 and 8. Do I have a motion? Mr. Rice. Anybody else have it together?
I'll move to approve items 6 and 8 on the consent calendar with one typo correction on page 4 of the minutes. Captain Forrest's name just needed to be respelled.
Thank you. Do I have a second for the motion?
I'll second that.
Councilman Brzezinski, thank you.
And for discussion, I understand that this asphalt sidewalk is a temporary measure, and therefore it's not intended to be the final outcome. Is that not correct?
It is the recommendation of the town engineer that we do the asphalt treatment at this point in time. That is the funds that are available from TDA. Otherwise, we wouldn't have funds to complete a more expansive project. And this is adding the safety to the street. Mitchell is an unimproved street already, and this asphalt would be the treatment that could allow some safety on the side, but it is all that we have the money for at this point in time.
So it's temporary until the full street is improved at some future point in time.
Thank you for the clarification.
So we have motion made, motion seconded, clarification done. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of consent item 6 and 8, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Meeting adjourned.